This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you very much for tuning into the program. It's Tuesday, January the 6th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. David Williams, he's produced the program. Let's get at it. If you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air, 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 86. 26, so let's put a bow on the 2026 World Junior Hockey Championships held down in Minnesota. All right, so we come home with the bronze. Beat the Finns last night 6-3. The Swedes beat the Czechs 4-2. All right, so we come home with a bit of hard work. Just a couple of notes. I know there's much more important and consequential issues on the go, but, you know, Canadians, we love a bit of hockey. For starters, really small crowds, which is disappointing to say the very least. And then it's the reaction. You know, for me, winning the last game of the year or the tournament and winning a bronze is better than losing in the final and getting a silver. That's kind of how it always felt to me anyway. But I think our players have been conditioned to not celebrate a bronze. I mean, I know it's not the gold, but, you know, no smiles, no hopping over the boards, no mobbing around the goalie, just sort of, oh, well, whatever, we won the bronze. And all the disappointment in the interviews, what have you, I get it. And I know there's a lot of pressure being heaped on the shoulders of these teenagers. And, you know, we've kind of lost our way. Hockey is a team sport, but we've got such an unbelievable focus in North America on individual skills and points and goals and assists that the teams that look much more like teams are feeding us our lunch. So anyway, I know it's not the biggest deal in the world, but what do you think? All right, for minor hockey associations, nominations are now open for Craft Hockeyville. So it's an annual competition. Of course, you put your best foot forward and you nominate your rink to get some upgrades. This year, celebrating the 20th anniversary, so a rink in every province and territory is going to get at least $50,000 in arena upgrades. So then there's going to be two finalists. The runner-up gets $100,000. The winner gets $250,000, an opportunity to host an NHL preseason game. Nominations are open until the 1st of March, so there'll be at least one rink in this province guaranteed $50,000 in upgrades. No small money. All right, sticking with the ice. And this is one of the wackiest things to ever happen surrounding ice hockey, or pardon me, ice competition. In this case, figure skating. Let's go back to the Cobo Arena, Detroit, Michigan on the 6th of January, 1994. Two of the key skaters wanting to represent the United States at the Olympics were Tonya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan. So they had just finished a practice session on the ice there in Michigan. And then, of course, the plot that was orchestrated by Jeff Gillooly, who was Harding's ex-husband, and Sean Eckhart, who was Harding's bodyguard, the attack was supposed to hobble Kerrigan so she couldn't compete in the national championships and consequently the Winter Olympics. It failed. She went on to win Olympic silver, and Harding banned for life. Hindering prosecution, she pled guilty to some of those related charges. So the Nancy Kerrigan, Tonya Harding story was wild when it happened, remains wild today. Now, that said, January the 6th has become infamous for other reasons in the United States, but I'll leave that up to you. All right, so it's Old Christmas Day. It's one of those strange ones. I don't know how many of the traditions are abided by today, but of course it was the move from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar, and after all the hundreds of years of minutes being lost, different leaders, based on direction from the Pope, just fast forward to 10 days. And so consequently, we ended up with Old Christmas Day. So whether it be the 12th bun or the 12th cake or the concept of the willows will bloom this morning, be gone by sunset, issues regarding the animals heard talking at midnight, all of those fanciful traditions that were once long celebrated. I'm not so sure how active they are this day and age, but anyway, there you go. Hear from a lot of school families, and of course, for the metro region yesterday, no school, but virtually every school in the province is now open today. You hear the same old struggles, and I remember them, is trying to change from your Christmas routine regarding sleep and the rest of it to try to get back in school mode. It is tricky. Then you harken back to a conversation we had with Karen Gray, the acting child and youth advocate, about access to mental health supports. It really does feel like there's more and more youth. I mean, you see the numbers at Kids Help Phone, and you hear the stories from the families. We talk about mental health and access to supports, and it's even different when we talk about some of the contributing factors for many of the country's youth and many of the province's youth. So I think it's important that we keep that conversation on the front burner for a variety of reasons. The political pressure to expand access. The removal of stigma as best possible. And we know full well that especially for youth, some of their mental health is compromised because of the internet, because of what happens in their social media accounts. And I think that's still a big conversation that doesn't get the attention it requires. All right, let's keep going. Boy, oh boy, I mentioned it yesterday and then consequently got bombarded with people screaming about their power bills. Remember last February, there was a huge pushback against Newfoundland Power and Newfoundland Labrador Hydro about the power bills and the justification about colder temperatures, which is real, and wind, which is real. But man, are we ever hearing a lot about it. In addition to that, we think back to the Nalcor days, now Newfoundland Labrador Hydro with Oilco splintered out. It was about salaries and about bonuses and the like, and it really drew the ire of ratepayers, taxpayers here in the province. Same thing floating around now on social media regarding the salaries for executives at Newfoundland Power. I get it. The only difference would be, at a Crown Corporation, we do indeed have much more control than we do when we talk about Fortis and Newfoundland Power and how they set the salaries for their executives. But when people are seeing those posts and then they're looking at their bills and they're looking at rate applications coming from either entity, then, of course, it just piles on the frustration. So if you want to bring that forward here this morning, we can do it. And I see this story in the media this morning, and this is nothing new, but it's absolutely worth putting back out there. And way to go, Matt Barter. Matt Barter has done an awful lot of work filling out access to information requests, and he's done it again. So, of course, when he was a student at Memorial University, he brought forward a lot of interesting tidbits for public discourse. This one is about the number of hours that paramedics have stood in the hallways at emergency rooms to offload their patients, and we have talked about this extensively. One of the key factors here is that it's hard to come by the data. So when we talk about whether or not the very lucrative contract that was given to Medivie to amalgamate the road and air ambulance, and of course to try to reduce things like red alerts and to try to address the offloading at emergency rooms. As you hear Rodney Goody, and we always like having Rodney on the show from the Paramedics Association, this is not just an impact on paramedics and the patients in the hallways at emergency rooms. It ripples throughout the healthcare system. So he points to the obvious. If someone's in a hospital bed that belongs in a nursing home or in a long-term care bed, that complicates the problem. Of course, it'll always boil down to staffing, but that ripple effect through the system is absolutely very real. And to use Mr. Goody's own words, when we have paramedics not doing what they're trained to do insofar as reacting to patients in dire circumstances in need of immediate emergency care, as opposed to standing in the hallway, lives will inevitably be put at risk. So the hours of delay, and the delay clock doesn't even begin until 30 minutes after arrival at emergency room. At just the 3 emergency rooms in and around town, in October alone, there was 2,016.5 hours of delays regarding offload times. So, the NL Health Services say things are getting better and they're working towards solutions. What they are, we don't know. But I think Dr. Pat Parfrey is going to be on the program later this week. So these are one of the issues that we can broach with him. When you talk about data, remember, when red alerts were one of the measures about how we assess the efficiency of the ambulatory service, and we're told can't no longer use red alerts. Well, we have to. You have to have something to measure against. If we see a reduction in the number of red alerts month to month, then we can get an idea of whether or not we're on the right track. Same thing with these offload hours. It's important to capture these things accurately month over month. It would be good for NL Health Services. It'd be good for the politicians. It'd be good for me and you, because at least we'd have a better idea of exactly how we're doing. Considering the fact that it was all the rage to amalgamate the ambulatory services, and there was in excess of $500 million contract signed by Medivie to do exactly that. So between Medivie and NL Health Services and the Paramedics Association and the long-term care operations, we really do need to capture these numbers so that we can really have a good, clear understanding about exactly what's going on. All right, changing gears somewhat. Expecting a call possibly on this one this morning. And this is a fascinating interview with John Risley that was published in the Financial Post. Everyone knows who John Risley is, whether it be his days with Clearwater Seafoods and on to the Eastern Energy Partnerships. He had a big telecom company in the Caribbean. What was it called? Caribbean Telco Columbus International Incorporated. All right. To begin with, we understand Mr. Risley's want to set up wind operations on the Port-au-Port Peninsula under the brand of World Energy GH2. Couple of things. He's pretty much gone on to say, when asked about the green hydrogen future, he points to Europe's energy prices that spiked following the invasion of Ukraine. Green hydrogen really felt like at that time, the federal government thought it, Mr. Risley thought it, many other proponents thought it would be the next big thing. Not so much. He's basically said, simply put, these are his words, simply put, there isn't a viable market for that electricity. Yet, they're talking about a $75 billion investment to make Atlantic Canada a green hub. Talk about first phase, 5 gigawatts of onshore wind from this province, 5 gigawatts of offshore wind from Nova Scotia. Pointing to the obvious. Firm, reliable wind offshore in Nova Scotia, pretty firm, reliable wind onshore in this province. Couple of questions. So he's pretty much said the green hydrogen play, for now at least, is not a real thing. I mean, they haven't even started to build the offloading capacity in Europe. But he goes on to say this is going to require private backing, the provincial government to be on side, and the federal government to be on side. He says he's already submitted an application to the Major Projects Office, but we were told repeatedly that environmental assessments that were released, even though an onshore wind turbine, whether or not it's producing power for electrolysis to create green hydrogen mixed with ammonia for sale abroad or for domestic implications, is we were told, though, that the leases for Crown land were very much project specific. Does that change any of the water on the onshore wind turbine beans? I don't know, but it'd be nice to have an understanding about what the province knows about this. You know, $75 billion. It kind of feels like what was once a political branding exercise of the Atlantic Loop. It went by the wayside. We weren't in, New Brunswick wasn't in, Nova Scotia had no interest, and it just went away. But now where are we? Like, is this even a real thing? I mean, they're talking about domestic use of this power, whether it be in Ontario or Quebec or possibly the northeastern United States. But it kind of comes out of nowhere. Right, $75 billion, which is a lot of money when compared to some of the less, albeit significant amounts of money to create the green hydrogen plays. And I know we focus a lot on World Energy GH2, but the market is the market. If it's not there for the green hydrogen for World Energy, then it's not there for the rest of them. One of the partners that they have, though, is Pattern Energy. Pattern Energy is a subsidiary of the Canadian Pension Fund, and they're the folks behind the wind play at the Port of Argentia. So it's a pretty interesting development here. Kind of came out of nowhere. I'd be curious to know exactly what conversations sound like with the provincial government and the possibility for the Major Projects Office to take it on in Ottawa, because we've talked about Beta Nord and the Upper Churchill and Gull, and we can and we should continue to talk about it, and what the implications of this means for some proposed hydro developments. Boy, oh boy. And even that referendum concept, I'm interested in it, as you know. All right. See the province talking about, and this is again not new, about the need for more housing. All right. High water mark in this province back in 2012. The construction industry was booming. Housing starts that year were 3,885. We've heard from the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation talking about the need for 60,000 new housing units over the next 6 years. So, mathematically, 10,000 per year. We're nowhere near. From January to October of last year, there was 885 housing starts. They'll talk about red tape and bureaucracy and getting the municipalities on side, because every municipality has slightly different regulations. And we do know that that is some of the logjam, and it needs to be addressed. All hands have to be pulling in the same direction. Okay. But what kind of gets lost in many of these housing conversations, we can talk about the number of units required, is I'm still at a loss for how we're going to hit the affordability target. Like, even if we just use the tried and true definition of 30% of your income to be afforded to rent and to your mortgage payment, even though if you have a mortgage payment, it comes with other bills that aren't seen until you actually experience some problem or another on your property or in your home. So yeah, we can talk about all the red tape issues, and it's important. And you can talk about the federal government removing HST from first-time home buyers. Important stuff, even though that gins up demand when we have a supply issue. So, again, Can someone, whether it be in the construction industry or at provincial or federal government levels, really give us a better understanding about how they're going to hit affordability? You can build all you want, but if people can't afford it, then that kind of misses the boat, doesn't it? Your thoughts? All right. A couple of quickies before we get to you. So, the oil industry, both in the United States and in Canada, reacting to the American intervention in Venezuela. And we can get into the ins and outs of that. But what does it mean for this country? You know, for Canadian exports, and a lot of it, of course, flows south to the United States. So they'll talk about diversification of markets and getting to tidewater and all the rest of it, and the need for more pipelines, and we'll see if the private sector actually comes on board. Even though our primary market in the States is the U.S. Midwest. All right. So the Canadian oil industry says there's nothing really to worry about. The price of a barrel of oil hasn't fluctuated that much. And I mean, it's only been a few days, but it's around $62. And it does have implications in this province because a lot of our budget desires, or a lot of our budget goals are attached directly to the price of a barrel of oil and the value of the Canadian dollar. Okay, the oil industry in this country says nothing really to worry about in the short term. I mean, with the tens or hundreds of billions of dollars of investment required in Venezuela to get their decimated infrastructure back on track is a long way down the road. To that end, American oil industry is pretty much saying a very similar thing. No big deal in the short term, and they don't think that they're willing and wanting to dive headfirst into Venezuela with all the investment required because it's still a pretty unstable country. Even if you just eliminate or kidnap Nicolas Maduro, doesn't change all the governmental infrastructure and the approach taken by Venezuelan leadership. So I don't know. But then you hear some of the quiet things being said out loud. I mean, even when you hear from American leaders yesterday, and this regarding Greenland, they're not taking off the table military intervention. It's remarkable. I don't even know what there is to be gained. You know, it feels like this American might and chest thumping because they have full and exclusive access to military bases in Greenland at this moment, if they're talking about Arctic sovereignty. To that end, there's meetings in Paris right now with some 30-plus world leaders talking about the pending Ukrainian ceasefire and security pledges to be made. But here's a couple of the comments coming from them. A senator from France has said that Washington is the court of Nero. Portugal, one of the founding members of NATO, one of their leaders went on to say that Trump is objectively a Soviet or Russian asset. These are world leaders saying these things out loud. Right? So it's no longer just the social media theorists that are saying it or alleging it or just tiptoeing around it. These are leaders in Europe saying it because they know that any intervention in Greenland is really going to tip the balance. And then it's things like Venezuelan oil and saying, you know, it'll cripple China. China's import of Venezuelan oil is less than 5%. So all that really does is make the relationship between Russia and China tighter and stronger. So the conversations that are going on are just mind-boggling, and some of them absolutely do have an impact on this country. Of course they do. Last one, mention of Ukraine. This story was always bizarre enough. But current sitting member of Parliament, Liberal Chrystia Freeland, has been now taken on apparently an unpaid role being an economic advisor to Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukrainian president. You can't be both. You can't be advising another sovereign nation on anything, including their economy, and be a sitting member of Parliament. It actually contravenes some of the rules associated with elected office in this country. Now we know that she's already going to be leaving 1st of July to start her new job as the CEO of the Rhodes Trust educational charity. But until yesterday, there was no mention of her stepping down from her role as an MP. But she apparently in the coming weeks will. You would hope so. I mean, this is just unbelievable. You cannot work for two different sovereign countries if you're an elected member of Parliament here in this country. She represents a Toronto riding called University Rosedale. It's long been a pretty safe Liberal seat, but safe these days has gone out the window. So Chrystia Freeland, maybe it shouldn't take another coming weeks for you to step down. Maybe you should do it right away and we'll have a by-election and off we go. So you can't be both. And on that front, people have bemoaned the amount of money going to Ukraine over the years. Whether or not you're on side with it, I'll leave it up to you. And something else that was pointed out is that, yes, and this is true, the construction of a new ski resort, a huge operation with some 25 hotels. It's called the Goro Ski Resort, basically being funded by, I don't really know, but the Oko Group, which is a holdings company in Ukraine. People wonder whether or not any of the aid being sent to Ukraine is being funneled into operations like it. I don't know, but it's a curious observation, and fair enough. Last one. I want to congratulate 3 of the new 80 appointments to the Order of Canada, 3 people from this province. Mark Dobbin, Brendan Paddock, and Dr. Proton Rahman. So congratulations to you all. That's really quite a prestigious honour. Let's check into the Twitter. That's not very prestigious. We're VOCM Open Line. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, let's have a great show. You know the deal. It can only happen one way. You're in the queue to talk about whatever's on your mind. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's begin this morning on line number 4 and say good morning to a friend of the program, Rob Strong. Good morning, Rob. You're on the air.
And a good morning to you, and a happy new year to you, David, Linda, Brian, and the whole crew at VOCM.
Happy to have you on the show, and happy new year to you.
Patty, I, like you, was very interested in reading about John Risley's proposal for power generation on land in Newfoundland, for the island of Newfoundland. Risley, as your listeners know, was the main proponent behind the Port-au-Port development. When, of course, they were going to generate electricity, to use it to split the hydrogen from the oxygen in the water and convert it to ammonia, ship it to Europe, convert it back to hydrogen, and bang, Bob's your uncle. And, of course, we all know that has not happened. As Risley pointed out in his article in the National Post on Friday, I guess, the market's not ready for that, so he's already smart enough and shrewd enough to look at alternate sources for electricity. And he's talking about 5 gigawatts, and I had to go back and remind myself what a gigawatt was, and of course a gigawatt's 1,000 megawatts. And Port-au-Port itself, the development he's planning over there was 4 gigawatts, so that's 4,000 megawatts. And he's tied up with Pattern in Argentia. Pattern has a distinct advantage, of course, because its proposed wind farm is located on lands owned by the Port of Argentia and therefore not subject to any rental fees, as the other ones are. So just those 2 developments themselves have probably got 5 or 6 gigawatts. And to put that in its context, Patty, we talk about the Upper Churchill. We talk about increasing the existing Churchill Falls development by 1,000 megawatts, which is 1 gigawatt. And we talk about Gull Island as being 2,400 megs.
Yeah,
is that correct?
2225.
Yeah, so they're talking about 3,000, roughly 3,500 megawatts, which is 3.5 gigawatts. And Risley is talking about generating 5 gigawatts on land. And obviously to develop development on land is a hell of a lot cheaper on the island of Newfoundland running a transmission line, although he's quoting a figure of $70 billion. Now, what that includes, we're not sure. I'm sure it's more than just a transmission line. But it introduces an interesting perspective on the whole concept of Newfoundland being a powerhouse. If indeed we could generate 5 gigawatts, 5,000 megawatts from some of these wind farm proposals, and combine that with 3,000 or 4,000 megawatts or 3 or 4 gigawatts, then boy, we've got a big power potential in this province.
Yeah. Look, we can build turbines. We can do all of these things. The trick is when you're talking about the possibility of $75 billion investment, it's really going to be fascinating to see, even if it's the back of the cocktail napkin math, about getting the power out of here. Because that's the expensive part. We can build the turbines. It's actually getting the power to market. Because even if we just talk about the Maritime Link, because that is going to have to go under the seafloor somewhere.
Correct.
So the Maritime Link was built by Emera Nova Scotia Power, $1.5 billion of 10 years ago dollars, and that can only carry 500 megawatts. So imagine the onshore transmission plus the undersea cable to carry 5 gigawatts from this province. That I'd love to see that number and the plan, and obviously without power purchase agreements, that this is all just flight of fancy.
There's a lot there's a lot of unknowns at this stage, but conceptually it sounds interesting. It sounds really interesting. I mean, various governments talk about powerhouse, and if we can generate that amount of power, and of course we sell the power, we make money, and also the producers of the power pay taxes. So I'm interested to see where it goes. John Risley is an interesting man. He's certainly a mega thinker, and you have to give him credit. Let's keep our fingers crossed on that one, Pat. Patty, while we're talking about energy, I can't help but throw my 2 cents in on Venezuela. Wow. There is 306 billion barrel potential, and every commentator I've heard over the last couple of days talks about how far away, how long it would take to do it. But I need to remind us all that, Bay du Nord was discovered in 2009, and we're looking at first oil in 2031. Hibernia was discovered in 1997, and it took us 20 years to get first oil in 1997. So when we talk about expediently producing, let's not forget that for certainly us on the East Coast, 10, 20 years is the norm. So if all of a sudden you've got 300 billion barrels, it's in 10 years' time. That's the norm for offshore Newfoundland. So let's not discount. Everybody arbitrarily says, we don't have to worry about that as being competition. Well, we're not the fastest game in town, are we?
No, we're not. But I suppose versus offshore, this province, and you know much more about it than I do, but the Venezuelan reserves are much more...
I don't know about that, Patty.
Okay. Well, they're much more similar to the Alberta oil sands than they are to the lighter, sweeter crude off our shores. And it's just going to be tricky when you hear from industry. Like, I've been trying to follow along with both Canadian and American oil industry executives. They're pretty clearly saying in the States that, hold on now, we're not so sure we're ready to dive headfirst into Venezuela with the type of investment required. And I mean, it's some of the most capital-intensive extraction of Venezuelan oil. It requires a serious dilutement and even transportation to the American South Coast refineries. And our market is the American Midwest. So the short-term issues, I don't even know, until we hear from industry about their actual goals or the approach they're going to take in Venezuela, it's all limbo as far as I can tell.
It is, and as you know, having spent some time in Western Canada, heavy oil requires an upgrading process before it gets to the refinery, and that's a very expensive process to do. And I'm just reading now my favorite international publication called Upstream, and I'm reading an article by a company called Rystad Energy, which is one of the better harsh environment, deep water consultancy firms, and they're saying, and I quote, Venezuela needs $183 billion to lift oil output to 3 million barrels per day. So it's not going to be a cheap process, but and the other thing, of course, is the oil industry wants certainty, and at this stage, who knows what's going to happen in Venezuela. So, but it's certainly interesting. It's going to change conceivably, and I say this conceivably, it's going to change the whole global dynamics of oil. I mean, if you've got Venezuela, albeit heavy oil and costly to produce and so on, but being 306 billion barrels of oil, and I think the next one is Saudi with 250 or whatever. So it's been an interesting few days in the world of energy, hasn't it?
No question. I mean, let's just think about it out loud. If oil companies tell us all the time that one of the key issues they need broached is regulatory certainty, whether it be for exploration and consequently possibly production, that's one thing. But another thing they need when we talk about other sovereign nations, they need political stability. There's no reason in this world to believe that all of a sudden Venezuela is a stable democracy. I mean, let's be real. Removing one person from the equation changes exactly that, one person.
Yeah, you're entirely correct there. And of course, that's something that we in Canada can offer to the oil industry is stability as a government. Well, yes, we changed governments from liberals to conservatives to whatever, but in the context of Venezuela, we're a very stable country and regulatory certainty as well. I mean, we unfortunately for us, we got the oil out there. We just can't seem to find it. We can't seem to put the right mechanism in place to find the billions and billions of barrels of oil that have been identified by extensive seismic work. So that's something I think we should all be thinking about working on and trying to find a way to. Because as you know, we haven't had any land sales. With the last 3 land sales, we haven't had any bids.
Zero.
And yet the oil is out there, yet we're a stable economy, yet the market is there. So why aren't we getting exploratory activity? And that's a challenge I think many of us in Newfoundland should be tackling and thinking about, because oil is such an important part of our economy in Newfoundland for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the Canadian energy stocks took a bit of a tumble yesterday. Oil, not so much. It was actually up a little bit marginally this morning, around 62.26 last time I looked.
But that's not healthy.
No, it isn't. My point was...
Not when you're in deep water, harsh environment, logistical nightmare, complex reservoirs, and I mean, there are lots of challenges here, but we should be able to overcome them.
Here, here. Rob, it's good to have you on the show.
Always good to talk to you, Patty. Again, Happy New Year to everybody.
The very same to you. Stay in touch.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. All right, let's get a break in. When we come back, there's a caller there to talk about the Bay St. George Sport Recognition, our good friend Bill Hines. Then a couple of calls about the ambulances, nurse practitioners, and then, of course, whatever you want to talk about. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Dave, is there an accident call you wanted me to take? It's no longer there. Okay. I'll just keep rolling. Okay, let's keep going. Let's go to line number 2. Good morning, Bill Hines. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Happy New Year.
The very same to you. Thank you.
I just wanted to update the people in Bay St. George on our project that we have ongoing. And I was just thinking about it, and we're going to our 3rd year already. I can't believe it. But anyway, when people come up to the dome and have a walk around, as they come into the dome, they'll see 3 banners that we have. And yesterday you mentioned a young lady your way into international street hockey. And we have our own street hockey Hall of Famer in Christian Coos, which I thought was really neat that someone else was involved in ball hockey like that. So as you come into the lobby, you'll see 3 banners, and then you'll see a section done in the lobby as well for all the national and international events that was hosted in Steamville. We have 21 different sports sections done. We have our retired hockey numbers up. We have 2 herder banners up. We have a section for athletes of the year done. Section for former broadcasters in the CFSX radio station that was here but is no longer. A section for minor hockey scholarship program is done. Plaques for residents in Sports Hall of Fames, which we have 13 Hall of Fames represented from Bay St. George. And we have a section for sponsors of the project. And right now we have about 7 sections left that we have to cover up with plexiglass to protect it. But other than that, it's been going along pretty good.
Really glad to hear it. So when we get the update, which I really appreciate, and it's to your point, it's hard to believe we're into our 3rd year of these conversations. You still must be looking for more contributions, whether it be different sports or different athletes or different pockets of your region. What are we doing?
Yeah, we're doing all that. There's another part of the project that I want to do, and but as any project, funding is all important. So if anybody want to jump on to be a sponsor, no matter the amount, that would be more than welcome. It's an ongoing project. So, and we have some space left at the dome, believe it or not, and hopefully we can get more things done.
Yeah, I hope so. Any other message you want to leave us with this morning, Bill?
No, just that I would like to thank all the volunteers in all the different sports, and because as you know and I know that without volunteers, especially in the small towns, sports would probably vanish. So I'd just like to take this time and say thank you to all the people that are involved, and people who are thinking about getting involved, do so, because it's a rewarding experience, I tell you.
Absolutely, and we talk about the preservation of culture because if you don't, it gets lost. Same thing when we talk about the history of sporting achievements or individuals or different sports themselves in this province. So I'm glad you're doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Patty, and thank you for the time.
Happy to do it. Stay in touch, Bill.
Okay, buddy.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Bill Hines with the Bay St. George Sport Recognition. All right, let's keep going here. Line number 1. Caller, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi. Patty, I heard you talking about the ambulance at the hospitals. I'll just give you my experience. I had to call the ambulance on New Year's Day to have my husband taken to the hospital. I called about 4 o'clock in the daytime. I called 911, and they asked for my address. I said, I'm on the main road in Holyrood. She said, you have to tell me the name of the street. I said, well, Conception Bay Highway in Holyrood. And I gave her my number. So that was fine. She said, we'll send the ambulance. I thought she said they're on Witness Bay line, and they should be there shortly. They said, could you get somebody to stand at the end of the driveway, to let us know where you were. I said, yes, no problem at all. 25 minutes later, the ambulance arrived at the bottom of the driveway. They were sent to the wrong address. They were sent to number 387, Conception Bay South.
How does that happen?
Because I said Conception Bay Highway, Holyrood, but I guess when you have to say the name of the highway, Conception Bay Highway, I mean, that runs through, 10, 11 communities?
Something like that, absolutely.
Yeah, so they were sent to 387 Conception Bay South. So then they had to call back and get rerouted back to Holyrood again. Now, no problem. When they got here, fine. They had a problem getting on my driveway. They were excellent. I must say the fire department arrived first. The EMTs came after that. They were wonderful with my husband. Took them a long while to get him down. They had to take him in a chair and take him down the driveway. We got to the hospital. They got to the hospital, I think, in half an hour. By the time I got there, it was probably an hour. I figured, now he's in the corridors waiting to get a spot. When I got there, he was in his bed in emergency, had his IV in, and had his blood work done already. So we waited around. He had some tests and things like that done. He was there for like several hours. As we went in, there was one stretcher and an ambulance crew out in the hall waiting. Just after we got there, I should say, there was nobody there. We got in first. A couple hours later, I went out and walked around the halls just to say. At that point, there was 3 more stretchers, there was a total of 4 stretchers in the corridor with the 4 crews, and I guess 4 ambulances pulled up at the door outside waiting. That lasted for, I would say, anywhere from 6 to 8 hours. They were all there.
So, just a very quick question. We go back to the beginning. Given the fact the ambulance had to be rerouted, how much time did that add to the response?
I understood when they got the call, they were on the Witless Bay line. Now, that's not far from Holyrood. We're just when you come down the access road there by the old, where the rubber plant was. It took them 25 minutes to get here.
Okay.
So they went out to CBS. They had to get redirected, find out where they had to go, and come back here.
So overall, given the time frame, response time, rerouting, are you giving this a thumbs up, or how would you classify your experience?
Once they got here, they were wonderful.
Okay.
They were excellent. I have no complaints at all. But, having to say Conception Bay Highway, when it goes through so many different communities, I can see all kinds of problems.
Yeah, and we've had this discussion in the past. There's an opportunity for leaders of municipalities and local service districts.
Yes.
There's a very simple package available at the government for civic addresses. So as opposed to giving out the information like you did, you'd be able to say, I'm at X address in Holyrood, and it'll be right inside their GPS system, so there'll be none of this type of confusion. I think we should hope that all municipalities get on board and put all these civic addresses in for whether it be a first responder as a paramedic or a police officer or whatever the case may be.
Exactly. When I answered called 911, she said, "Where are you?" I said, "I'm on the main road, number 387 in Holyrood."
Yeah.
That should have done it.
Should have done it.
Saying Conception Bay Highway threw the thing off.
Absolutely. And so I suppose if we, it'd be good to get some direction, wouldn't it? So that you've given some advice from the paramedic services. So in this case, I guess Medivy it's incumbent upon them. Here's how we'd like people to relay the address information. So there is no confusion. So there is no rerouting of ambulances, because luckily enough, that 25 minutes didn't necessarily jeopardize your husband's health, but it might be for another circumstance. That 25 minutes might be a huge difference.
Somebody with a stroke or a heart attack, 25 minutes is critical. And now, I'm estimating time, but I would say, to my best estimate, anywhere from 6 to 8 hours, possibly even longer. There was 4 ambulances held up outside, 4 stretchers in the hall, and 4 crews waiting in the hall. And that was just one hospital. I dare say it was more so at the Health Sciences.
Probably right. And like this one young man, Matt Barter, got the access to information. In October last year alone, over 2,000 hours of wait time to offload patients in just 3 emergency rooms in and around this area. 2,000 hours.
That's a lot of time off the road. They're all out of service. They're out of service, basically.
Absolutely. And like one of the paramedics said, it's heartbreaking. I don't know if that was the word he chose, but it was heartbreaking to hear the radios go on and off as paramedics were making their way into standing around in hallways with the patient, as opposed to being sitting behind the wheel and ready to go with the next 911 call.
That's right. And like a lot of these patients that were in the stretchers in the hall, I mean, they were ill. They were moaning and groaning. The ambulance drivers were there with them, or the EMTs, I should say. But the staff can't really help out because those patients haven't been triaged. Nobody knows what's wrong with them. They can't do anything for them.
Exactly.
They have to wait to get into emergency to be assessed and to see what's needed to be done. It's terrible when you think about it. It's an awful system, and there's an awful lot of time wasted. Awful lot of time.
Yeah, and we've got to get down to it. So I think that the fundamental place to start is to accurately capture these numbers every single month and publicly disclose them so we know where we are.
Exactly. And they have to do something about the addresses. It's like, when you say conception-based health, it's okay somebody who lives in the area and realizes enough to say, well, we're on conception-based health. But a lot of people don't. And I did say the main road in Holyrood and gave them the number, but she said to me, you have to say the name of the road. So that's what threw the monkey into the wrench. I think that disrupted the flow.
I assume so, but it needn't be that way, though, either.
No, it should not be that way at all. Not at all. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents. I'm still in the once the staff got here, they're wonderful. The staff was wonderful at the hospital. I have no complaints at all, but there are problems.
And how was your husband this morning?
He's getting better. He's going to be in there for another while, but he's getting better.
Well, I'm glad to hear. Pass along my best wishes.
Will do.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. All right, let's get an accident call before we get to the break. Line 5, Gerald, you're on the air.
Good morning, Perry. How you doing?
Best kind, you?
It's a regular day on the highway. But Paddy, there's an accident 1 kilometer past Steadybrook going west towards Cornerwork. We're on the turn. The cops are there and the tow truck's there, so it's going to be a bit of delay for the tow truck to get the curb picked up.
So is the traffic backed up both directions, or what are you seeing?
No, just one direction, just in the westbound lane going towards Cornerwork.
All right, so folks, if you're heading that way, maybe take your time, pull over and get a coffee, because it's not going to be cleared up quite yet.
All right, Paddy.
Thanks, Gerald.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
You too, pal. Bye-bye. All right, let's get a break in. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 6. Edward, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. Hope you're doing well in the new year.
So far, so good. Same to you.
Thank you. Paddy, I want to speak about a matter that my daughter actually finds herself in. Not only my daughter, but many others as well. My daughter is a registered nurse. She got a Bachelor of Nursing degree. She's been working in the system for 10 years or more. And a few years back, 2, 3 maybe, I'm not exactly sure, she decided she wanted to do the nurse practitioner program and she's been working towards doing this program. And she's been doing excellent. She's got, I think it's about a year and a few months left. Just to clarify, like, she's working full-time as a nurse, and she's doing this very intense program on her own and at her own expense, which is fine. But she finds herself now, and all her classmates in her particular group they're very, very worried that they're not going to be able to see this program to completion. And that's very unfortunate, in my opinion, not only for her, but for the population of the province, who I think many people think, well, this is the future of the healthcare system, where doctors are so hard to recruit. But it's coming to, as of next January, as I understand, as she told me, that she has to begin the final 4 months of this nurse practitioner program, which is a full-time program requiring 100% of her, I'll say, her time. And she has to, I'm talking about her, but it's many more besides her. She has to take a leave of absence from her work. She's not allowed to work while she's doing this final 4 months. She's not eligible for any student loans, as I understand. She's not eligible to collect EI. The government, or the Department of Health, or the Department of Education, I don't know who administers this, in all honesty, but they basically say their advice is students should do careful financial planning, because for 4 months they're expected to have zero income, no work. They're not allowed to work an extra shift or a shift when they're doing this final 4 months. They can't work any time to try to augment their income. So she's a normal person. She's got a house. She's got a mortgage or rent, whatever the case might be. She's got to have a vehicle to drive to work. She's got every kind of an expense that an ordinary working person has, and we all know. And the department, whatever limb of government is involved, basically says you have to live for 4 months with zero income while you do this program. Now, I don't know about you, Patty, or any of your listeners, but that's an impossibility for most people. I certainly wouldn't be able to live for 4 months without any income. And the crazy part about this is the government, they know about this situation. All branches of government and previous governments, they all know this situation. And the same applies to student nurses. They're expected to work periods with no pay. It's basically slavery, even under the guise of furthering your education. Yet the government has no problem spending millions, tens of millions of dollars, bringing in foreign nurses. They have no problem throwing out hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to recruitment bonuses for doctors and all that stuff. And I don't really have an issue with that, I suppose. But in the interest of fairness, it's not very fair the way they're treating these upcoming nurse practitioners who are really going to be filling a vital role where there's such a big shortage of doctors. And I know I'm getting long-winded here, Patty, but I got to get all this out. And when the election was on the go there a few months back, the Conservative, Wakeham, that was one of his promises, that they were going to fix this injustice, and they were going to do it on day one. Patty, I think that was the quote. Day one, they're going to fix this. So these dedicated individuals are not placed in this impossible situation. And I'm using your airways, Patty, because I know the politicians are listening, to get out a reminder that they need to get in gear and get this fixed before they have a bunch of almost graduated nurse practitioners having to quit because they simply can't afford to live under the rules. And basically, that all the guidance that they're given is students should do careful financial planning, which, in my opinion, is not living in reality.
Well, it's hard to financial plan if you don't have any money.
Patty.
Yeah, no, it makes all the sense in the world. If access to primary care is as big a deal as we all know it is, then making it easier and realistic. I mean, for someone who's young, who wants to be a nurse practitioner, whether they come from the ranks of registered nurses or not, if you can't financial plan around very limited money, then you can't plan at all. And so consequently, people who might be nurse practitioners won't be. And so that's just one more person out of the role of primary care provider, and we can't afford it. And the money that you're talking about for them to be assisted over the course of 4 months, in the big scheme of things, in the big scheme of an $11 billion budget, is peanuts. And the reward or the result is meaningful.
You're absolutely right, Patty. You said it better than I could, but that's absolutely right. I mean, the government, and I'm not, like I said, this applies to all the previous governments because they all had a chance to correct this. But we got Mr. Wakeham and his ministers now who are in charge, and this was one of their campaign promises. So I'm certainly hoping that it's not going to be an empty one, because all these potential nurse practitioners can go a long way to helping alleviate all these wait times and stress that people are going through because they can't see a family doctor. So it's time for Mr. Wakeham's government to live up to their promise and get this fixed.
Hear, hear. Really appreciate the time this morning, Edward. Thanks for doing it.
Well, I thank you for the time as well, Patty, and I hope this call will spur a few more people to add their voice to get the message out, because we need all the health professionals that we can get.
That we do. Appreciate your time, Edward. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Patty. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, let's get a break for the news. When we come back, John, you're next. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 3. John, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. You'll have to partially excuse me. My dog is talking to me at the same time as I'm talking to you.
That's an old Christmas Day bit.
He doesn't understand any of this.
Fair enough.
He's used to getting all the attention. But anyway, the reason I was calling you was about the international situation that's going on with Venezuela and a few other things. You can hear him here there now, probably.
Yeah, no problem.
The thing is like Trump and them has been, I guess it's coming out that what they're really after is oil, but they've been blaming it on the drug things, and what they're doing is like, I have to explain a bit of my I majored in history, and when you major in history, you don't just do all history, you do specific areas, and I did revolutions of all things, and one of the things that comes out is that you learn when to recognize what's behind all this. Like when he's picked off Venezuela, and then he's going for Colombia, and then he's going for Cuba, and then he's going for Greenland. It's called island hopping. And our old friend Adolf did the same thing 100 years ago. And he picked out small countries as they went by because they didn't have the nuclear power and stuff. But the problem goes back generations, is the supply going into the U.S. is because there's a demand in the U.S. for it. They're funding both sides of the argument. We used to call it the war on drugs.
Which was a miserable failure.
Well, yes, and it never worked then, and it hasn't worked since. But I mean, that's the major thing with them is that they're funding both sides of the argument. They're funding the whatever's going crop growers and countries that grow these things and export them, and they're also funding. There's people down in the U.S. who are actually buying this, and they never talk about that kind of an issue, because they realize there's probably nothing they can do about it anyway.
Look, the war on drugs, and regardless of what people think about it, history is quite clear. It did not work. And even if you just look at other circumstances where people who were leaders of sovereign countries were deposed by the United States. Let's just take the example in Panama with Noriega. So they went in, they scooped up Noriega, but at the exact same time, there was an actual plan. There was actually the next leader, Panama, was inaugurated on a U.S. military jet as the same time they were taking Noriega back to the United States. And what happened in that example, the flow of drugs from Panama didn't stop. In fact, it doubled. So a strategic plan regarding drugs is obviously required. And I heard an interview where the host was badgering a Democratic member of Congress about, well, you simply don't care about the 100,000 kids that are dying at the hands of drugs every year in the United States. When in fact, in the States, fentanyl and meth are killing the vast majority of people, and virtually none of that comes from Venezuela. And if you just take the Drug Enforcement Administration numbers at face value, these are not my numbers, these are the American numbers regarding production, transit, volume, and diverse sources of drugs. The top 10 list does not include Venezuela. It's Mexico, China, Colombia, Peru, Bolivia, Afghanistan, India, Ecuador, Guatemala, Dominican Republic. So it kind of really throws a huge monkey wrench into the arguments being made.
Yeah, you can go on and listen to Miles like almost forever, and he's using the other excuses to invade it. But I mean, it sounds. I mean, to a person who's on history, it sounds highly familiar to what went on almost 100 years ago. That I always call him Uncle Adolf. He did the same thing when he took over the Rhineland, and then he went from the Rhineland to Australia, and he went from Australia to Czechoslovakia, and he went from Czechoslovakia to one thing and another. And Trump is doing the same thing, and once he's conquered most of those countries, I mean, we're going to be the next target, because we're only going to be the only one left standing.
Quite possibly. And look, let me just, for my own personal clarification, Nicolas Maduro was a bad man, an evil, corrupt, despotic dictator that needed to go. It's how he goes is the question, though, right? Isn't it? And even with this whole bit about, it wasn't a military action, it was executing an injunction, or an arrest warrant by the Department of Justice. Okay, that's all fine and dandy, too. So they called it a police action or Department of Justice action, even though there was military strikes and 150 aircraft, and we don't know how many people were actually killed. But at the same time, it was impossible to deal with the drug boats coming from Venezuela other than blowing them up. And that, of course, was called an act of war. It was part of a war on drugs. But then, of course, this one is not. One of the last times the Americans got involved in a police action in another sovereign country? Vietnam. That didn't work out very well. Regime change has been messy. And in fact, the Americans have a terrible history of it. And, is there actually a legal preface to be running a country like Venezuela because you kidnapped or abducted or arrested the president or the former president? He was, of course, completely illegitimate. Venezuelans are celebrating. No one is denying any of that stuff. It's just that it's the what next? What's the plan? And who's next? Is it Greenland? Is it Colombia? Is it Mexico? Is it Canada? I mean, I don't know. But the unpredictability of the last year gives us all pause for what might be next.
Yes, and I mean that's where the similarity comes into it. I mean, like I just said, if you study history, actually when I finished and graduated. The first couple of jobs I went to interviews for, and they said, people asked me, what can you actually do? And I said, well, not exactly a hell of a lot. I can explain to you about the French Revolution as compared to the American Revolution or that kind of thing. None of them employable, but the thing is that it's such a similar situation that that history repeats itself, and Hitler was the same way. He was a terrorist, These guys, yes, they're terrorists. They run, drug cartels and one thing and another, and Trump is going to use these excuses. When he first started out and when he was first elected, he was blaming drugs coming in from the north, which proved to be absolutely hardly any. But when he runs out of countries to conquer, and then with this Monroe Doctrine, which he mispronounces, the idea, which goes back a couple of hundred years, that he wants to run all of North America, we're going to be a natural target.
Well, actually, it's even further than that. He calls it his hemisphere. There's a lot to that. The Monroe Doctrine was pretty much about preventing the European recolonization of the newly independent Latin American states. This corollary is more about subjecting the Latin American states to the U.S. colonization. So it's not even the same thing, let alone have any merit all these decades and centuries later.
Yes, he's quoting from a document which he has obviously no knowledge of, and there's a different time frame and one thing and another. But since the 20th century came into existence, Europe and other countries were aiming for this, and is history repeating itself? And when he runs out of countries to conquer here in North America, Canada is going to be the next target. And I think he's probably going to use the separatist ideas in Quebec and in Alberta. I couldn't think of it for a second. And he'll exploit those to enhance the demand to go into these countries, into these provinces and separate, divide and conquer kind of thing. And but it's again, it was like I recall one presidential candidate years ago talking about the war on drugs, and he was saying, well, we're funding both sides of the argument. We're funding the countries that are growing it, and because we have people in America who use drugs a lot, and they're funding that part too. And then medical, one thing and another things to do with it. And but it's such a historical. And the historical argument is there, and it should open our eyes to what the hell is actually going on. And if we're not careful, that's what appeasement during the Second World War period was all about. Is that, okay, we'll close our eyes and it'll go away. It won't.
And it didn't. And I don't even want to go down the CIA's role regarding drugs. That rabbit hole is pretty deep and dark. And, just last one for me, and then I'll give you the floor, is even when we talk about the Americans and other countries being complicit in these drug-related issues, cartels and otherwise, is the American banking system is largely responsible for laundering upwards of $500 billion a year in drug money. So, we know this to be true. So there's an awful lot of role that the Americans themselves play inside their own borders, let alone what goes on in Latin America.
Oh, unless it lost you there.
Oh, sorry, John. I'll give you the floor for the last thoughts before we say goodbye.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. But I'm just pointing out, and I hope that people will know and take it for really recognize what the hell is going on, and to be aware that we're next, or four or five down the road line, right? And and we got to start preparing for that, and and it don't take no big brain to recognize this. And like I said, I majored in history because I couldn't do anything else, and but that's the way we're heading, and that's the way unless we do something against it now. We're going to continue heading in that direction because he's the same kind of person as what Uncle Adolf was.
Well, even if we're not talking military intervention, even it's as simple as American involvement in our media, American involvement in the separatist movement in Alberta, which is patently obvious, there's ways to sow seeds of discord and chaos without setting a boot up for military personnel in Canada. So I'll throw that in there. John, it's really good to have you on the show. Glad you made time.
Thank you.
Take good care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah, I mean, I'm not in the mood to fearmonger or to be hyperbolic on this stuff, but hey, it's not me saying it. The President of the United States has talks about annexing Canada. It's as fundamental as that. So am I worried that there's going to be American F-35s buzzing St. John's? No, I don't think that we need to go too far afield. But even just discord and chaos, I mean, we see it all the time. We had a public inquiry about the foreign interference into elections. The business community says political interference from other countries is part of their life as well. So who's to believe it's not part of our everyday life, even if we don't consciously see it and smell it or feel it? Let's get a break in. Don't go away. Welcome back. Let's go to line number 4. Dr. David Brake, you're on the air.
Hello, Paddy. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well.
I just wanted to talk a little bit about the opening of Metrobus at 1:30 yesterday, which was an hour and a half after the city's other facilities opened and half an hour after the provincial offices opened. This kind of difference in between, priorities for bus, I can't honestly tell you whether it's consistent or not, but I think we've got a new council now. We've got a new provincial government. Maybe it's time to look again at whether this should happen and what we can do about it.
And look at it insofar as what? And it's interesting that you note Metrobus, because all the while beginning somewhere around 8 o'clock yesterday morning, the garbage trucks were on the road, but Metrobus wasn't. So that's also a bit of a contradiction. So look at it how, David? What are you suggesting?
Well, one thing that would be a good start might be, and I don't know, this may be a thing already, but like if there was a widely known standard normal emergency plan for buses, so that you knew that if there was going to be a big snow, unless something went wrong, it was always going to be like open an hour before city facilities opened, or what I would suggest is, like, ideally, what the city and province should be doing is looking at this, taking a long view and saying, look at all the lost productivity of people who can't make it into work, and is it right to have some city facilities available and not others, that kind of thing. But if we can't get there right away, maybe a starting point might be to have a standard smaller service that was better supported for covering some of the major places and routes, like maybe the ones that cover major government offices and city facilities could be still running while others were coming later. I know something in some cities is that they have certain bus stops, maybe routes, but maybe bus stops, that if the weather is bad, in advance it's not going to get served. So if there's a big dump of snow, you go, okay, well, I know I'm going to have to get to this stop, but when I do, there'll be a bus that's there. So it's a halfway house, but I do wonder whether that might not be a good place to start, right? Like, at least we'd have a skeleton service off. And you could use that same kind of plan later on, maybe for public holidays and for night service. But have a predictable, earlier opening, smaller service that you can provide, so that at least some people can get to their city or provincial or, for heaven's sake, private businesses at a reasonable time.
Yeah,
As you say, garbage collectors can do it. Like this is done elsewhere.
it might result in quasi-picking winners and losers for who gets to get on the bus. And interesting, you mentioned bus stops. One of the key focuses of a report about trying to improve Metrobus and to increase ridership was to make sure that we had more good or better bus stops, which sounds like something that's pretty fundamental. But as opposed to standing in the rain or the snow to be able to get in out of the elements while you wait for the bus, does indeed either keep people from or promote people to ride the bus.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, no question about that. And it's in years ago, where there were reports, two of them from independent people who said, yeah, 100% we should be aiming to double the number of bus stops that have shelters, and that objective was quietly dropped. There have been, as you know, some prominent bus stops with shelters that were removed. The ones near the gathering place spring to mind.
Yep.
There are more being opened, but we desperately need a lot more. And of course, a shelter that you can't get to because you can't walk to it, yeah, it's another another issue. Or that we say that we have accessible bus routes, but are the bus stops at these accessible bus routes? Can you in fact get a wheelchair or with a walker or whatever? Can you get across the giant humps of snow that are left behind by the city? Yeah, it's not accessible if that part's not. All these things need to work together. As I say, I think you're right in the sense like the objective should be all these things are put together, that we shouldn't have winners and losers. But I do think on the whole, like, better to have some, pick our battles, right? Better to have some service on key routes that works early and then roll it out later across all the routes than just have lousy service across, or very late service across the whole city. And have it consistent so people can plan ahead and go, oh, well, I know that my local bus stop isn't going to be working till 1:30, but if I can somehow get to, half a mile down the road, there is a stop that will work. Seems like something worth looking at.
Yeah, and it's interesting that we're measuring the Metrobus performance and timing, because for an awful lot of businesses and otherwise, they time their closures around whether Metrobus is on the road. So there's a lot of hand in glove right here.
Yeah, well, I mean, perversely, I kind of wish that were more true, because what I worry about, and I'm not at the private businesses, or I'm not there to say, but what do you do if you are a contract worker or whatever, and your boss just doesn't care and says, I expect you to be here somehow when the shop opens, and if you're on a low wage and you're not able to get your bus, suddenly your cost is going to be a taxi, and your costs go way up. Like, you're going to lose money on coming into work because of that kind of thing. So, and this is the kind of thing that pushes people who really, in an ideal world, would like not to be able to, like not to have to bear the cost of running a car. It pushes them into getting a car that they can't really afford. In order not to be able to take a job, right? I mean, ironically, I can imagine getting a job interview for a city job and having the city say, well, I hope you're not relying on a city service like Metrobus to get into work. We need you to get a car. So I think, probably informally is actually happening, but implies a certain kind of contradiction there somewhere.
That it does. Appreciate your time this morning, David. Thanks for doing it.
My pleasure. And I hope someone picks up on the ideas and has to think about them.
Hear, hear. Thank you, David.
Take care.
You're welcome. Oh, take care of yourself. Bye-bye. All right, let's get a break in. When we come back, we'll keep it rolling with you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number 6. Say good morning to the Ward 4 councillor here in town. It's Tom Davis. Councillor, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Happy New Year.
Same to you.
So I had snow tires put on my vehicle. This is like a public service announcement. And my son came over and he said, you have directional tires, and one of your tires are on backwards. So for people who, and this is a big box store that actually has tire in its name. So for people who have tires put on, whether it's all seasons or snow tires, that's something you need to be aware of. That a lot of tires now are directional, which means they have a right way to go on and a wrong way.
Absolutely.
And it can impact, especially for bad conditions, snow, and the tire will actually perform totally differently. And if you have them mismatched or all of them on wrong or whatever else, it can actually lead to unsafe driving conditions. So to pass that along to people.
I'm glad you actually mentioned that, because there was a number of winters ago, someone on this exact same topic had the left front on one way and the left rear on another way, and caused all kinds of problems.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, so everybody go out and check your tires. On a related note, it's amazing how many different topics a city councilor is subjected to, and if you really try and open yourself up to things, like I'm listening to David Brake, and and it's not to throw any shade on my other colleagues. They're all, wonderful people, but I'll tell you, to be able to really process the complexity and really kind of grasp all the different, it's such a big organization. And then, of course, you have, like all bureaucracies, resistance to change, or maybe just the fact that in order to keep things running smoothly, it has to be somewhat bureaucratic. But David's talking about some great suggestions there, and I'm going to miss him because he's moving away. I'm going to miss when he goes. Hopefully, he stays connected. But it's like yesterday we had garbage collection all throughout my ward, and I'm sure through other wards. In the morning, on Monday morning, when everything was closed, it makes no sense. I've been around driving through the ward taking pictures of buried garbage cans. So again, some sort of disconnect somehow, which I'm going to get to the bottom of. Let's just let the residents know. I'm not sure what happened there, but we're on it.
Well, there was certainly plenty of confused or frustrated or angered people that sent me emails about garbage collection proceeding yesterday before the streets were even actually cleared, before people even had a chance to shovel out their garbage tin or box or bin. Yeah, anyway.
So, it's a couple of things. Tomorrow, unfortunately, we've got this forecasted heavy rain and storm drains, big issue. So people, those bad storm drains. In theory, there's a group within Public Works that goes around and cleans out these storm drains, supposed to, but realistically, there's just not enough resources allocated to that. So just encourage people, try and dig out your storm drains. I was just in front of an 84-year-old lady's house, clearing it out for her. She used to do it, but she's no longer able to do it. So, and obviously, I can't spend the next 2 days doing it. But anyway, so just to put that out there.
Understood.
So I'm going to just take off the hat now. And yesterday I was honored to be asked to speak at Harold Williams's funeral. And, I don't know why. The pastor of Victory Church, he reached out to me and told me he'd passed. And it really hit me really hard. And I think it's because I saw him as someone who was really making a difference in a challenge that is almost insurmountable for just normal people. And we were sitting around the council tables, and I know around dinner tables talking about the people who have really who are struggling with addictions and with mental health challenges. And then, of course, we also worry about the people who are being impacted by those people. So for whatever reason, I felt a connection to Harold, and then also another connection is that my business shares the parking lot of the Victory Church, and he would be there on Sunday mornings when I'd be plowing and salting, and he was greeting everybody and had this big smile. And so as I was preparing to say some words, it just occurred to me, because I went on Saturday and it was an amazing outpouring of community. The people who were going through that church before the service, which was yesterday, but this was kind of like a wake on Saturday. 100 people went through the place every hour, and it just went on all day. But it was a real mixture. So for me, I went there and I realized that his son, one of his sons, actually had been a really good customer of mine, and then he went to school with my daughter, and then he'd married a child of good friends of mine when I was going through university. So I really thought about how the connections are created and how we're all connected. And then I just, the pastor gave this talk about how basically, people who know Harold's story, I mean, he was pretty open about it. Spent a lot of time in jail. He was not a nice person. But basically, he spent over 40 years in addiction. And when he came out of it, and he became very religious, when he came out of it, he, which was only really the last 6 years, he did so much good in the last 6 years. And, it's such a lesson. But the other thing that I really spent the whole weekend reflecting on is, why as a society and why as governments can't we identify the people like Harold who are out there? I use Tina Oliveira as another example, out there who are, they're really, really able to connect with people. They've got some progressive ideas. They're putting their heart and soul into it. They gather volunteers and people around them. I think for 2026, one of the things I'd really like to call on, and right now, the family and his friends and community are, they're grieving, they're going through that process. But I'm hoping that when we all get through that process, that there'll be a recognition amongst the people who spend the money in our province, who have the power over that, and I include myself in that bucket. But that we'll recognize that we need to do things differently, and that it's not to take anything away from the professionals that we pay a lot of money to, but a lot of times it's people with the lived experience. I talked to a young man there who has got his forms there to become an addiction counselor. I thought, maybe we should have a fast track, because people who have recovered or are in recovery from addictions, they've already learned most of the stuff you're going to teach them in school. They just need to be given the more technical information, and that could be done, pretty quickly. This guy is super smart. He just has a trade. I mean, he's just a guy who fell into addiction like so many people do, and a lot of it, could start on a prescription pad because of an injury. But so, for the people who listen and the people who contemplate, I mean, first of all, not judging and realizing this man is as harsh as a man as Harold was in his past. He has three incredible children. Like, they all spoke, and these are people who have got, reputable jobs and have married like influential people in our community, and who have really done well and loved that man to pieces and said he was there for them through, even though he was in jail for 12 years. And it was just such a beautiful thing, and such a lesson for me about judging people based on their appearance. I mean, Harold was covered in tattoos, and he could be pretty spontaneous and pretty outspoken and all that stuff. But I just thought, it doesn't really matter where you are. The pastor said that he read a poem about the dash. So you have your birth date, and you have the day you pass, and in between there's a dash. And really, what matters is what you do in that dash. And sometimes it's the last 6 years. In Harold's case, out of a 6-year lifespan, that he really made a difference. So I find it inspiring, and I hope others do too.
It's never too late to turn it around. Look, I've known Harold Williams since the 80s anyway, and back in the day, and we can do that type of reflection, but the most impressive part for me is whether it be him and or his brother Mike, they were the first to admit that their past is really quite tattered and they did a lot of bad things, but when push came to shove in their later years, they did a lot of good things, and that should not get lost in the conversation. I know, based on stories people have told me about interacting with Harold in particular, that Harold was a godsend, and I don't say those things lightly. And if that's the case for one person, and I'm sure there's dozens out there who were able to get some sort of help and or support or a shoulder of Harold Williams to deal with or lean on, then that's a good thing.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people out there who have been inspired by him, and I'm really going to pick up the mantle. But I really think that government and the different organizations need to kind of get down out of the ivory towers and need to meet these people where they are, and need to recognize that they're the people. It's not the people with the masters and the doctorates who are going to solve this problem, because if they were, they would have solved them long ago. There's a million different ways to go at this, and we need to do it as effectively and as quickly as possible. Because when you see someone like this young man I described, who has had a rough life but comes from a good family, and you can just see the light in his eyes, but he needs support, and he needs love, and he needs all the different things. And I just encourage people to not to judge, but also to be inspired by the possibilities of people like Harold and, like you say, his brother Michael. Yeah.
Appreciate the time, Tom. Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
You too. Bye-bye. Let's get a break, and when we come back, we're talking doctors, Metro bus, whatever you want to talk about. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Linda, you're on the air. Uh-oh. And here we go. Linda, line number 2.
Hello.
Hi, Linda. You need to turn your radio down, too, so it doesn't shag us up.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm just going to move right out of that room. I'm just calling about the Metro buses. I live out in the Goulds. Now, I mean, we're part of St. John's, and our bus route is like an hour and a half apart. Can you hear me?
Yeah, what does that mean? Your bus route is an hour and a half apart.
Oh, sorry, I had you on speaker. I didn't realize. I work in town, so the bus comes at 10 after 9. I start at 11, but the next bus don't come till 10:30.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Like, I mean, we're part of St. John's. I mean, I can't for me to get to 10 after 9 bus, I'm downtown I get downtown at 9:25, 9:35 maybe. Like, it's a pretty fast route. But the 10:31, I don't make the connection, so I'd be late for work. So I've been taking a taxi since last year. And I got no other choice. I've got to go to work. But like an hour and a half, that's a long spiel. The Goulds is a big spot.
It is. I don't know exactly how frequent buses would be on various routes, to be honest with you. You know, and I know...
Downtown, they're 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, I was going to say, and maybe some of the spots like downtown is probably much more frequent than that. I don't know if it's 15 minutes or not, but I suppose easy enough for me to go on Metrobus's website and have a look.
Yeah, and for me to come home, like I can get the bus at 6 o'clock when I get off at 6, like 6:15, the bus comes down on Water Street, but then I won't get my connection at the village till 8:15.
Yeah.
Like, it's really inconvenient. I mean, it's a good thing I like my job. Like, I get a taxi home and I take an Uber back. Because I try to give the Goulds taxi a bit of service, but I mean, they won't come to town to pick me up. So I just grabs an Uber, and it's cheaper, but, you know. But still, 4 nights a week, it adds up. It's digging into my pay time.
Well, of course it is. But, yeah,
and I don't understand it.
Yeah, I can't offer a rationale as to why it is the way it is. I'm going to take a guess it's based on ridership, but that being said, let's just pretend that it is based on ridership for a second. Ridership will inevitably be down in an area that's serviced like the way yours is.
Yes. Yeah, like that's a good, I'd say it's a good year and a half now that I've been at, and I've called Metrobus, and they said, well, you know, it's more convenient because of the people that are riding. And I said, yes, but I see who gets on the bus, and I'm not down on anybody that's going downtown panhandling, but there's probably only 2 or 3 people on there that actually works. Like, cause the people have avoided going on the buses because it's not a nice situation. Like, I would never get on the Metrobus now. Never.
Well, simply because of time or the ridership?
Time and the ridership that's riding the buses.
Yeah, we do talk about, you know, much less money being transferred from the City of St. John's to Metrobus operations. We know Metrobus ridership is up. A lot of it has to do with maybe whether it be newcomers who use the bus and or low-income earners who have been given a free bus pass. And I'm not looking down my nose at either or, but that's why the numbers are up.
No, I'm not either, but I have to, I go to work and I've got to pay for, I got to buy my bus, get my bus pass.
Yep.
And most of the people that are on these buses are people that are not paying.
Well,
sad to say, but it's true.
Well, it is true. Well, we know that the province gave low-income earners a bus pass, and I understand why, because even if we do the juxtaposition about how people were able to get around in prior, was we were paying for taxis. So consequently, this is a money saver, and yes, it ups the ridership at the Metrobus, and yes, it saves taxpayers transfer dollars to Metrobus if you live in the city of St. John's. I guess Mount Pearl and Paradise too. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, Metrobus is, you know, the city is paying for their Metrobus, so the Metrobus is not gaining by it.
I don't know. I think the province is actually paying for them, so it's not coming out of the city pocket.
Okay, so the province is paying for it. You know, so, but like I said, it just doesn't make sense. Like this 10 after 9 and then 10:30. Like that's almost an hour and a half, and it's terrible.
It's certainly not convenient.
No, well, I have I get my Uber at home, but at night, in the mornings, I actually has a friend that lives downtown. She's retired from Metrobus, and she picks me up every morning and takes me to work. And I'm taking a taxi home, so I'm lucky. But I mean, it's come a time that she's probably going to say, "No, Linda, I really can't," you know. But right now she's good as gold. She does it for me. But anyway, and it gets her out of bed, gives her something to do, I guess. But anyway, like I said, this hour and a half thing, we are a part of St. John's, and I think it's terrible. There should be more. And there is a lot of riders on the bus.
I would imagine there is. And I don't know the rationale. I was just taking a wild stab at it. But I suppose Metrobus, if someone in there is listening and give us a bit more of a better understanding about how timing is adjudicated, then we'd be happy to talk about it here on the show. No problem.
Because up until a year and a half ago, it was 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. It was right on the hour, and it was perfect. I could get it right outside my door. But now, 10:30, I won't make my connections. Summertime, I don't mind going down early and go for a nice walk downtown. But, this time of year, you don't want to be at that. So...
Point taken. We'll see if we can't get someone from Metrobus to give us their understanding about, help me understand how some of the routes are plotted and the time for buses to be coming up to the bus stops, whether it be Goulds or otherwise. Anything else this morning, Linda?
No, that'll be all. Thank you very much.
Appreciate your time.
Have a good day.
You too.
Have a good day.
Alrighty.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Let's get a break in. When we come back, plenty of time left for you. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Tom, you're on the air.
Good morning, sir. How are you this morning?
Doing okay, thanks. How about you?
I'm perfect. Great, thanks. I listened to one of your previous callers about the ambulance situation, and I think it was back in November. I had to use the ambulance service. My blood pressure went through the roof for some reason, and twice I had to use it to get to the hospital. And I experienced the same thing. It was the first time I'd ever experienced it before, was that the attendants were there with me forever, it seemed. And I kept saying, why are you guys still here? And I didn't understand until they explained to me that they had to remain with me until I saw somebody or somebody saw me or something like this. So, surely to goodness we can fix that, because that's absolutely crazy. I mean, absolutely crazy.
Yeah, that's a liability issue, right? Unless you have a medical professional with you, someone's going to be held liable, in this case, a paramedic.
Well, you have to do something. I'm sure we can do some kind of a better system than that and have somebody at least sitting with you instead of having these guys tied up like that, because that to me is a bit crazy. But the reason I called you this morning, Patty, was the same issue I had spoken to you last year, and that's dealing with the certification of doctors in the province. Over the Christmas period, a former health minister called me friend, and known him for a long time, and he called me just to wish me Christmas, and we chatted for about a half an hour. And I raised the issue with him again about the certification of doctors in the province. And man, now that he's no longer the health minister, he opened up to me. And he said to me, we spent millions recruiting doctors from Ireland, and we brought them over here. And he said, guess where they are now? And I said, I don't have to guess. I know where they are. They're on the mainland. Because our people here, for some reason, are not certifying the doctors that we're bringing in. He said to me, for example, the doctor who has been working in Ireland for a long period of time, certified by the Irish Medical Society, comes here, and our people say, where were you trained? I went to school in Iran or something like that, and all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose. Despite the fact that this doctor was vetted and has been practicing in the Irish medical system, our people here go absolutely nuts. And the person is not certified for some crazy reason that he couldn't understand, that former Premier Fury couldn't understand. And right now, we're faced with a situation whereby we have all of these doctors that we recruit and we bring here, and for some reason, they're not being certified. I have a friend that I've spoken about many times, been here for 3 years, has to go to Ottawa, been Ottawa twice for testing when we have our own medical school here. and still waiting after 3 years.
Yeah.
Practice medicine?
It's madness. I think some of that gets addressed if we finally have a national license. So, the ability to float between provinces as a locum doctor or whatever the case may be. But if I'm qualified to be a doctor in Burnaby, BC, I should be qualified to be one in Burgeo, Newfoundland. So we should have a national license. There's no good reason as to why not. We should have a list of accredited medical schools in other countries where we go and recruit. They come here, we fast track their credentials, and off we go.
I totally agree. And he said the same thing. He said to me something which I didn't know. And again, if I'm misquoting him, I apologize. But he said he thought now there's something like 17 countries where we're fast-tracking doctors. Well, great. But, I know this is going to be an awful thing to say, and I'm going to get backlash as a result of it. But whoever is responsible for certifying our doctors here, I think they're deliberately dragging their feet for reasons which can only be for self-interest. Because, again, to use the Irish example, if a doctor is in Ireland practicing medicine, surely to goodness that doctor can treat you and I. Surely to goodness, a doctor practicing in countries, especially Commonwealth countries, my goodness gracious almighty, who cares where that doctor was trained? If Ireland can vet a doctor, surely we can vet a doctor. If Scotland can vet a doctor, surely that doctor can practice here. So somebody needs to bring these people who have the authority to approve a doctor's license in this province onto the red carpet and say, what's going on here, guys? Why are the doctors that we're bringing in here leaving and going to other provinces? Is that the Premier? Is that the Health Minister? Who look, you and I and the Premier or nobody else can say that a doctor is qualified. That's ludicrous to suggest that we can. It has to be other doctors.
Well,
but somebody needs to call these people in.
It's the College of Physicians and Surgeons responsible for final accreditation. Look, if I'm a graduate of the University College Dublin or Trinity College Dublin or University College Cork as a doctor, I should be able to move to this province and very, very, very quickly put on my white coat and go to work. Yeah. So again, the purpose of my call is to alert people that what's going on. There's not a shortage of doctors. The problem is they were around. My wife works over at the Janeway. She's aware of a doctor who's providing respite care and has been providing respite care for quite a while. So, I'm calling out to the Premier and saying to the Premier, let's get this issue addressed. Or at least have somebody from the College of Physicians and Surgeons call into your program and ask them to explain what the heck is going on. It'd be helpful because I don't know the answer, but I do think, and I've asked this of doctors many times in the past, and of the NLMA and others, is, can we please just move towards one license to practice in Canada? I think that would help. I mean, even how many doctors have told us that they'd be more than willing to have a locum. Now, we've since had this Atlantic Canada registry where doctors can indeed move freely between the provinces, but let's just say there's a doctor in Ontario who's willing to have a locum position here in the province, maybe somewhere in rural Newfoundland and Labrador over the course of a summer. But because of the time and the effort and the frustration and the cost, they don't do it. There's no good reason as to why we can't do this. Now, I suppose if you ask individual health ministers across the country, they may have some territorial concerns with possibly being, another province adjacent to theirs might be greener pastures for one doctor or another. But, let's get it out of each other's way here. The primary concern is access to primary care. It's not whether or not we have territorial pissings on the go. Like when Nova Scotia and Saskatchewan came here, actively face-to-face tried to recruit our doctors and nurses, that's obviously a problem. But if we had one license fits all, and with accreditation, isn't going to necessarily change. The colleges all have very similar parameters that they abide by, but let's just get out of each other's way here. It's there's one thing in this country that should not be political, and that's healthcare, but we can't seem to do it.
No, Pat, we've had this conversation so many times, and you've echoed my concerns, I've echoed your concerns, and we've all echoed the same concerns, and nothing has changed. And again, I'm frustrated. And I got a neighbor who's been here for 3 years trying to practice. I got a list of 20 people that say that when she does get to practice, let us know so we can get a doctor, because there's so many people out there without doctors. I know you went through a period of time where you couldn't get a family doctor, and a lot of us have family doctors that are aging and things, and we're going to be looking for doctors. And here they are wanting to work, doing respite care, driving taxi cabs, doing all of those type of things. Well, somebody has got to grab the bull by the horns and address the issue and get these people licensed so they can practice and give us the care we need.
And in addition to that, what a recruiting tool it would also be if you could go to a graduate of Trinity and say, okay, we have a position for you and we have a fast track in place. So upon arrival, by the time you find yourself a place to live, we'll have your license in place and off to the races. So, I mean, doctors who are highly coveted, very mobile professionals, they don't want to come to wherever they can't get to work right away. They don't want to be offering respite care. If they're surgeons, they want to be cutting. If they're OBGYNs, they want to be delivering babies. If they are family doctors, they want to be seeing family doctor patients. I mean, I don't mean to make it fundamental, but in some respect it kind of is. Tom, anything else before I take a break?
Final point I'm going to make is that I think it's all summed up by the issue that doctor on the West Coast is facing, where he was promised all of this money if he would do those things, and he can't even get an answer from the people as to where his money is. So that's the issue. It's a whole bureaucracy issue, and it needs to be addressed. And somebody got to be listening to this to say, my goodness, can we do something about this? Thank you for taking my call this morning.
Appreciate the time, Tom. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, bye-bye. And look, let's not kid ourselves. It's a small, tight-knit community. If Dr. Neil Patterson is willing to speak out, there's others in his same situation. I know of one personally because they reached out to me personally with the prospects of being anonymous, and I'll respect that. But then you'll hear this conversation will be heard by doctors in other parts of the country. And when doctors considering moving to this province or moving to this country, when they hear those types of things and, add into it the type of facilities they'll have access to, that is part of the decision-making metrics, you would think. Let's get a break in. When we come back, Joe's there to talk about benefits, and then whatever you want to talk about, don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go. Line number 2. Joe, you're on the air.
Happy New Year, Paddy.
Happy New Year to you.
Thank you. I'm sorry to hear about Arrow.
Fair enough. Yep.
Yes, he was a good guy. Paddy, I'm calling you now about the $1,551 you said we were going to receive, the seniors.
Yep.
When do you think we're going to get that?
Same day you get your GST.
Well, the GST was out in the banks, nobody never got it.
If you're eligible for the seniors benefit in this province and you filed your taxes last year, you were supposed to get the GST rebate and your seniors benefit on the 5th of January yesterday.
Yes, I phoned in this morning about my GST, right?
Okay.
And they put it in the mail yesterday, and it's still the same amount, $651.
Yeah, but that's just the GST.
Yeah, but they said there's nothing else coming.
Well, this is a conversation better suited with your MHA, I suppose, because I can only tell you how the program is supposed to work. Whether or not it's working as it's supposed to, that's another question.
Do you know anybody that already received it?
No. But, of course, it was only yesterday, so I don't have an answer to that. No.
No. Listen, you giving away that little puppy you got?
Pardon me?
Are you going to give away that little puppy?
No.
No? If you do, keep me in mind.
If anyone even looks cross at Dexter, I'll be 19 years old all of a sudden again.
Yeah. You like your Bobby?
I do, but I'm a big suck.
No, not wrong with that anymore, buddy.
No, you got that right.
Yeah. All right, and Paddy, I'll let you go talk to somebody else.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
All the best.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, let's go to line number 1. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi there, Paddy. How are you?
Great today. How about you?
Not too bad, not too bad. I'm just calling in regarding a new exciting business that just opened in Mount Pearl. I'm a resident in Mount Pearl, and I was very excited for this as well, actually. I've been there twice since it's opened. It's been open for about 11 days now, but I live adjacent to this business. And I'm sure you've seen on social media the lineups are absolutely crazy for this. And it's starting to kind of affect our day-to-day lives, getting in and out of our driveway. I really do want to applaud the city for putting up a big sign that says "Do not block driveways," but unfortunately, only about 25% of people actually follow that sign. So when we're getting in and out, or we're shoveling, or doing anything like that, we're facing people, and they're just shrugging at us. They're unfortunately we've encountered some people flipping us off. My daughter is getting into the car sometimes, and people are swearing at us, and we're just trying to get in and out of our driveway.
Yeah, it's not a lot to ask, access to your own driveway. And, signage is one thing, but it's funny how, a sign that says "stay off the grass" seems like an invitation to walk on the grass. So same thing,
exactly, yeah.
Same thing goes here with blocking the driveways. So a good first step by the city of Mount Pearl to keep the Taco Bell customers out of blocking people's driveways. Quite another thing to randomly enforce it so that people get the message that, if you do it, we will indeed write you a ticket. And I suppose they have the wherewithal inside their own bylaws municipally to do more than simply put up a sign. But people should just be a little bit more courteous anyway.
I mean, that's the bottom line, right? Like the people, giving us attitude. I don't understand. Like you're in line to get some fast food. You don't need to be mad about it. Like that little gap of a driveway isn't going to slow you down in the lineup. Now, I will say there was one day where a municipal cop was there telling people, "Hey, don't block driveways," and he was at the funeral home, parked there, kind of, guiding people. But nobody was really listening, and he said, "I'm just doing what I can." So we called the RNC. We actually called the non-emergency line and mentioned it to them, and they said there's nothing illegal going on here, but I kind of beg to differ. It's a main artery of traffic on a really busy road, and I feel like, there's something that can be done. There was one point where the security was telling people to circle around and come back, and that was like a day of freedom for us. We felt unbelievable having access in and out of our driveway, and then all of a sudden, the lineup's back. And Patty, I'm telling you, it's from 10:30 a.m. when they open until 1 a.m. when the drive-thru closes. And, I have a small child whose bedroom is unfortunately on that side of the road, so there's a lot of revving engines, people pumping music, and it's just, I don't know. I just don't understand why they're allowed to line up on Commonwealth Avenue like that.
Well, I mean, on top of that, for folks who may indeed been in that particular lineup and know in your quiet moments that you've been blocking driveways or being particularly unnecessarily loud when kids are in bed, maybe don't do it. It's not going to keep you from getting your burrito, because if you just have a gap between you and the car in front of you, you're in the exact same number in the queue. So nothing changes in your world. So just give people a break to get in and out of their own driveway. That does not seem like a big request.
No, and honestly, I understand the excitement. Like I said, we've been there twice.
Sure.
We absolutely love it. I almost went a third time. It's really good stuff. But just people being a little bit more courteous, I think, is kind of what I'm trying to get to the bottom of here today, because, people shouldn't be swearing at us and flipping us off as we're trying to get in and out of the driveway. Last night, a small bus was blocking a driveway while I was trying to shovel, and they saw me shovel, and they looked right at me. And it's just, I don't know. I just wish people would be a little bit more courteous with it. And we've got dogs too who bark when there's a lot of noise out in front of the house, so it's been a bit of an ordeal. But I know it's like this with anything new in Newfoundland. It was like this with the burger restaurant in the mall, and another burger restaurant on Stavanger Drive when that opened. I'm trying not to name businesses, but it happens when anything new comes here. I understand the excitement. I just think that we can all get along here.
Yeah, for sure. Look, I don't begrudge people trying to line up to get whatever it is they want to eat. I mean, so be it. And yes, novelty does drive a lot of traffic, but that's not really the point. The point is exactly what you said. I got kids and dogs, and I just want to be able to shovel and get in and out of the driveway without it being some sort of big bird flipping ordeal.
Yeah, exactly. It can really be easy if people just, follow along with it. And then, I did send an email to the city, and like I said, I'm interested to know what the law is on that. Like if that's, allowed or if it can be enforced. Because I see cops just drive by it and nothing happens. So I'm assuming for the time being, they're kind of just waiting it out.
Yeah, because if you're lined up and you are hungry, aka hangry, maybe stuff with an oatmeal bar or something in your pocket to tide you over before you get your Mexicana on.
Yeah, absolutely. All we're asking is just for people to be a bit courteous and, understand that there's residents living here. Most of the people on this side of the street are a little bit older. So, I can only imagine they're going through struggles as well. There's only a handful of houses on this side of the road, but, unfortunately, we're right next to this business.
Matt, hopefully your plea is heard by the lining up motoring public.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a pleasure to be on this side of the show for once. Thank you very much.
Appreciate your time. Good luck.
All right, cheers. Thanks.
Okay, bye-bye. Look, fair enough. People want to eat that particular food. Good for you. Whatever. But, I mean, come on. You heard what he's going through and his family are going through simply because of a lineup at a fast food restaurant. Probably not good enough. And as I mentioned, over the holidays, walked into one of my pals' house. He was watching the national news. The very first story that I saw on that screen was the lineups at Taco Bell, which is pretty wild stuff. I haven't had it yet. One of these days, I guess I will. Let's get a break in. When we come back, Kim's here to talk public transportation and then whatever you want to talk about. Don't go away.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number 3. Kim, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty. How are you today?
Great today. How about you?
Oh, good. Thank you.
Good.
I'm just calling with just some concerns again, just to add on to what the lady was speaking about earlier with respect to the Metro buses. I have a son who's a young adult. He's a homeowner in Mount Pearl. He's very lucky in that he's able to work from home, but he does have a visual impairment called congenital nystagmus, which means, he has to be very careful when he's walking down steps, walking up steps, because it affects his depth perception. And so, in the spring, summer, and fall, he takes the bus to go out to his social activities, to go get things that he needs for his home, things like that. Now that the winter is on, he's not able to take the bus because, one thing, he's got to be really careful, like walking on slippery roads and things like that. But one issue that he finds really challenging is that when he goes to get off the bus, say if we had snow and then the plows go by, and then so the area where you get off the bus, there's a great big pile of snow when you're trying to get off the bus. So for him, being visually impaired, and of course his depth perception not being on, he's not able to take the bus because he's scared to death to get off that bus because he puts his foot down. He's probably going to have to go up to 2 feet in snow, not knowing there's ice underneath that. And so, and I do understand that, the sidewalks can't be cleared as often, as the roads. That's fine. But I just feel like that, if bus stops are a part of, what Metro Bus is doing, they really need to maintain so that people can get off the buses safely.
Absolutely. It's just like, a safe access to my community mailbox. It's not my responsibility. It should be the post office, and consequently with Metro Bus, it should be their responsibility.
Yeah, and then like I said, he faces other challenges too. So like I said, he lives in Pearlgate East, not too far from that plaza there on Old Placenta Road, and so even when the times of the year when he can take the bus just doesn't even go into that huge plaza. Now that plaza is such a hub for Mount Pearl. And the buses, you can see that the indents are there on the street for the buses to go there, but buses don't actually run in there. Also, when he walks up there in the summer, he gets in there. A lot of traffic goes up there, between Tim's and Canadian Tire and those places. The traffic there is almost as bad as out on the street. And there's literally only one crosswalk in there. So when he walks up there, he said, "Mom, there's times," he said, "I'm waiting there 15 minutes and I can't cross the street." So, being a young person and having a mortgage in Mount Pearl, luckily he does have a good job. He studied hard, really sweet young man. But it costs him in the winter $500 a month in Ubers just to have a normal life.
Yeah, I mean, Metrobus is not simply just a bus stop with a sign and then a big four-wheel bus. There's other responsibilities, and, safe access to the bus should be part of it, obviously.
Yeah, and like I said, with respect, and also like when he goes up to the end of his street, in order to get to the bus stop, he has to cross Old Placentia Road. So a couple of months ago, because he only just moved there in June. A couple of months ago, we contacted the city of Mount Pearl, and we expressed our concerns about there being no crosswalk with a visually impaired person in the neighborhood. And they were going to get back to me and give me the information about a counselor that we could contact and all that, and they never did. He also filled out a survey for the city of Mount Pearl when they were getting some feedback, and let him know where he lived and his concerns, and we've never heard anything back.
Yeah.
So it's kind of frustrating.
Of course it is.
So yeah, because because of his visual impairment, he doesn't drive. So I'm not really sure where to turn, to get help with this stuff for him. But he just can't sustain that. His impairment is not severe enough that he feels he can get the GO bus. Because he can get to where he needs to go. It's just that there are obstacles.
Yeah, and then you add in everyone in the disability community. We all, I don't know how to say this. So when it's easy enough for me to get in my vehicle because the road's been plowed, but the sidewalks haven't, and then you talk about access to public transportation, which should be an all-inclusive word, access. This is an obvious issue, obviously, for your husband and many others.
Yeah, it's my son. So,
your son,
he's
pardon me.
A young man, trying to have a little bit of a social life to go out to a couple of activities he enjoys during the week as a young professional. But he's to the point that he just can't afford to go anymore, And it's sad.
Yeah. So this was a question posed by Dave in my ears: does he possibly qualify for GO bus?
Well, the thing is, he can walk to the bus when it's not winter. He can walk up to the bus and and do what he has to do. He is visually impaired. He has to look close to see things, and he has to be really careful walking downstairs and walking upstairs, things like that. His depth perception, and and be careful with when the surfaces are not perfectly flat and things like that. But like I said, he doesn't feel like he should be taking that service that's so badly needed by people who need it more. And I agree with him. And like I said, it's not always easy to get the GO bus, especially if you're really not in as much need as someone else.
Right, and that's fair enough. And it's kind of neither here nor there when we're talking about, might be others out there who have similar concerns with access to Metrobus who do not qualify for GO bus or are not eligible for GO bus, and they shouldn't have to fight the good fight to simply get on public transportation.
Yeah, I don't think he would qualify.
Fair enough.
But it's just something I wanted to throw out there in case someone had any ideas for us or how we can, go about making things better for him. Because like I said, we live in modern cities. These services really should be better. He went up for a little vacation in Toronto this summer, and he said, he called me. He said, "Oh my goodness, Mom." He said, "I'm going everywhere." He said, "I figured it out in 5 minutes. I'm here, there. I can be anywhere I want, in a flick." And he loved it, right? And then to come back here and then feel he can't get to go do the things that he wants to do because it costs him a fortune is really challenging.
It is, and unnecessarily so. Kim, I'll give this a little chase to see if I can find the right person for you to speak with, and if I can, we'll get back to you.
Okay, sounds wonderful. Thank you so much for listening.
I appreciate your time.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
I mean, these are things it does add to workload, and it might come with some operational expense, but there's a reason why public transportation is there, and it's got to be accessible to everybody in the public, right? Right. Line 1, Sean, you're on the air.
Good morning and Happy New Year, Pat.
Happy New Year to you.
Lots of important subjets here. And one I'm going to bring up is a frustrating one for me to even have to call on. I shouldn't even have to be calling on this, but a couple of nights ago, I was driving into town along the CBS Lower Road, and there was a guy coming at me in a very large pickup truck, and he had the high beams on. So I figured, well, he must not realize he got them on. So I just gave a little flick of my lights, and with that came back a full power bar of lights and blinded me completely on a turn. I almost went off the road. I couldn't see a thing. It just blinded me. That was my reward for just reminding him he had his high beams on. And I think some people that have these very bright power bars, I don't know what they call them, I think it's a power bar or light bar, on their pickups. I don't usually see them on cars. Once in a while you do. But it's such a dangerous thing to do because I couldn't see a thing. I was absolutely blinded. And I don't know if there's a dangerous use of automobiles or some kind of dangerous driving or that kind of thing. But I wonder if you could check that out and see whether or not they're even legal. I don't think they're legal. If it doesn't come with the vehicle, I don't think they're legal. But this guy had the big, huge power bar, and it just absolutely blinded me. And it could have caused a very bad accident. If there had been pedestrians coming, then I couldn't see. I'd probably hit one of them, So it's so dangerous. Just wondering if you have any information on that, or if you're aware of the penalties and stuff like that.
I am. Well, somewhat. So inside the Highway Traffic Act, there are indeed the availability for aftermarket lights to be legal, but there's some very specific consequences with it. For starters, it's got to meet all the federal standards, which not all aftermarkets do. Then there's questions about the color of the lights, the glare of the lights, the aim of the lights, because every headlamp on a vehicle has to be aimed correctly so that it does not cause a glare into the oncoming traffic. So these are really important rules here. Whether or not they're abided by, it's the same thing when we talk about the loudness of some aftermarket mufflers or exhaust systems, whether it be on motorcycles or cars. There are rules there. The trick is whether or not they're actually applied. So yes, I do know that the issue regarding dimming high beams, you're legally required to dim your high beams to low with oncoming traffic. And I can't remember what the distance is, 300 meters or something like that. But yeah, color and glare and aim. There's an actual limit to the number of lights you can have on your vehicle. So, yeah, that's as much as I know about it.
Well, it's a serious thing. I mean, we're seeing more and more of it, and there's a specific make of vehicle or manufactured out there that has higher or much more penetrating beams of light coming from their headlights than other makes of vehicles. I don't know if I should say which ones, but I guess I could. I find that I can almost tell you that it's a Toyota coming at me because of the way those lights are piercing. I don't really see it with others, or at least it's not noticeable. But to have someone out there who's using that thing to get back at you just because you flicked your lights, asked them to put down those high beams, is absolutely ridiculous. And if it's, I have no doubt what you're telling me is true. If the RNC are doing regular checks, then maybe they should have some kind of measurement where they can gauge lights on vehicles so we aren't blinded. I mean, this is a serious thing. I mean, it's dark early. Kids are out there on the sidewalks, and if someone blinds you with their, with their oncoming beams from their lights, you're putting more than just yourself in danger, and there's absolutely no need for it. And I wonder if the RNC are doing anything to stop that kind of thing.
I don't know. But, I mean, if it's lights that come with the vehicle, so manufacturers are obliged to follow along with federal standards, number one. Mm-hmm. Number two, it's part of the Highway Traffic Act, so the law enforcement, including the RNC, can absolutely enforce these things. Now, there's decibel meters to read the decibel level of your aftermarket exhaust system, but I don't know if there's a handheld unit that they can use to measure, I don't know if they call it lumen or candela or whatever the case may be, right. But it's itemized in the Highway Traffic Act, so there's obviously a way to enforce it.
Well, that's good to know. Now, I hope, and maybe the person who's the new spokesperson to the RNC might be able to come on your program one day and talk about it, because it is that serious, in my opinion. I mean, if you can't see because you're blinded, it's a very serious issue. The other thing this morning, and I was so happy to hear Councillor Davis on this morning talking about Mr. Harold Williams. I knew of him. I didn't know him personally, but you know what he did, as you quite rightly stated earlier in your commentary when you're on with Councillor Davis. The man did amazing things in the last half a dozen years of his life to help so many people. And I've heard his name just recently, just after he passed. I heard it through other people. Whose children were involved in different types of drugs and having a hard time. And they're actually talking about it and very, very, very saddened by his loss or by their loss. I think that maybe there's something government can do to recognize him. Like we recognize a lot of people around here and around the country for things that they've done. But I think it would be a wonderful to have Mr. Harold Williams recognized in a big way as a Pied Piper for helping those who are going through what he went through, like 40 years of his life. So I hope that, I'm sure that, as you always say, the politicians are always listening. I think maybe there's a nice statue down around the gathering place or somewhere in the center of town, somewhere where a lot of the people who find themselves hanging out a lot and getting help, I think someone like him could be, at least that legacy could be carried forward.
I appreciate the time, Sean. Thanks for doing it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, let's get our final break of the morning in Tunkaway. Welcome back to the show. Let us go. Line number 4. Hello, Otto. You're on the air.
Happy New Year, Paddy.
Happy New Year to you, too.
What kind of dog you got?
He's a red miniature poodle.
Yes, boy.
Yeah.
I had a Sabrina He used to take him under trap line, eh?
Yeah.
He was some dog. I had to put him down, boy. His legs give out, eh?
How old was he?
I'd say he was 10, probably.
Okay.
Yeah. Broken heart, boy. The same as losing a child, eh? Yep, that's it. Paddy, what do the ferries cost like run from Bellon to ferries, eh? They cost a lot of money, eh?
Yeah, they certainly cost some. Just the operation of the entire intra-provincial ferry fleet is around $100 million after tickets are purchased, yeah.
Yeah, they got to come to St. John's to work. Their doctors to the mall, eh? But the mine closed in 66, right? Why wouldn't they resettle? Instead of running the ferries, it costs a mint, right?
Yeah, I mean, and that's just operations of ferries. It comes with other associated costs, too. I guess the conversation of relocation, and we've already lived, or some people have lived through a forced relocation, that didn't go very well. The province, I think, recognizes, and this is not about Bell Island or one community in particular, but even when the province reduced the percentage of votes for relocation from 90% to 75%, they know full well that these conversations are happening in some communities in the province at this time, which can be pretty divisive, but we know what's happening.
Unreal. The light bill, like Musrat Falls, that one over budget, by $7 billion.
At least.
Well, they cost $6 billion, but it was 13 point something. Now, one Church of Falls, they skate on schedule, eh?
Schedule and budget. Yeah, now we don't even know what the final bill is at Muskrat. The last number we heard was $13.5 billion, but that's a long time ago now.
Yeah, that's for sure. Like I told some guys that we should have sent our light bill to Danny Williams. Oh, boy, God. You see, you're going to get some reaction.
Of course.
Eddie, I'm going to... This is the farewell party. I got a daughter works in the... Walmart, and some people comes up to her, we hear your dad on open line. She don't like that, right? So I love this is going to be my last call. I'm going to listen to you. I always turn down the radio when I go to bed. If I don't listen to it in the day, but in the night, eh?
Okay, fair enough. I appreciate you tuning in.
Well, no brag but fact. I like your show, and you're doing a wonderful job. And I say this is a farewell party.
Well, that's too bad, but stay in touch, Otto.
Yeah, well, if you ever come in the carnival, come to A&W, meet the boys, eh?
Will do. No problem.
Have a coffee.
Sounds
yeah, you still invited there to the department, too. If it comes in the carnival, drop in.
I appreciate the invitation, Otto. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Take good care. Bye-bye.
Yep, see ya.
Yeah, a little surprised there wasn't a bit more of an uptick on the telephone with power bill related concerns. And even when we added in, some of the social media posts I see floating around about the salaries for executives at Newfoundland Power, yeah, they're extraordinarily high. Did give one relatively saucy note that says, why downplay it? I didn't do that at all. What I said was, unlike Newfoundland Labrador Hydro as a Crown corporation, we have much more authority to evaluate, adjudicate, or adjust salaries. But when you're talking about a private, publicly traded company like Fortis, it's a little bit more difficult for us to, as a people, as a ratepayer to have much in the way of influence over their salaries. Now, all sorts of operational things about maintenance, and even though they were talking about computer software upgrades, those types of things, we have some control there, and the PUB can evaluate that. How we incorporate the conversation regarding salary, I just think is a little trickier, not downplaying it, because why? I also get a bill in the mail. I get one once a month, just like the rest of you. All right, let's check in on the Twitter box, see what's shaking there. We're VOCM Open Line. You know what to do. You can follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. All right, I got a little bit to go before we get to you. And again, off top of the show, when we were doing the final wrap-up on the World Juniors, which, of course, there's much more consequential issues to be discussing. But one thing I said that drew the ire of at least one hockey parent is I said something along the lines of, we've kind of lost the plot insofar as playing as a team, because we really do have a keen focus on individual stats. I mean, that's how people focus in on it. And plus, things have changed. You know, to be exposed to any real scouting, you know, minor hockey just doesn't do it anymore, which is why we've seen so many young fellas who used to leave home at 16, for instance, play a bit of junior, leaving home around 13 now to play in an academy, because that's where all the scouts are. So things have changed dramatically insofar as how we produce players. That said, now one other team in the country, in the tournament, had a U20 player playing in the NHL. Unlike Canada, which had at least 5 forwards and 3 defensemen that would have been on the team. They were of age, but they were playing in the National Hockey League. So we can't lose our minds over losing one game to Czechia. We still produce a lot of good players. All right, good show today. Big thanks to all hands. We will indeed pick up this conversation again tomorrow morning, right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Bye-bye.